Initially, I was drawn into it, as many are, as a parent of a precocious child, and who needed quite a bit more, both in level and let's say depth, creativity, and so forth. And in looking for something for him, I discovered the Master Program in San Diego, which turns out, I didn't know at the time, had formed just the previous year, so we were pretty much ground floor. It was founded in 2003. We were fortunate enough, it was actually started by about a half a dozen students who wanted more math. And they went looking for someone to help them get more math. And it turned out around the same time, this upstart company called the Art of Problem Solving was getting started here. And they got together and started to do a few things. And they needed more parent involvement, so they got the parents involved. And then it became too much for them to handle, so they handed it off to the parents, and it rolled on from there. We have this thing, a registered group. We used to be a walk-in, and that got to be just unmanageable. We had 400 students in a weekend, and we just couldn't run classes, so we had to scale back, so we now register students. And our registered base over all those grades is about 250 year to year, and that works out to be like 70-ish per group. We have 4 ability groups, binned in 2 grades per group, and about 70 in each of those ability groups. So on a typical weekend, we will have 4 parallel sessions, one for each of those groups. At the younger end, I actively try to reach out to more the community people who are connected with those kids. And then as we go higher up in levels, bring in more and more of the more expert people. So we will, for our top groups, often bring in the very professional mathematicians like university professors or art of problem solving people sometimes have a free weekend they can give to us. But we also reach out to those engineers in the, particularly Qualcomm is a major presence here, and other tech companies. And we try to bring that perspective in. My focus tends to be less on giving them problems and teaching problem-solving techniques as trying to inspire them, open their minds, show them things that get them excited. That's not always a problem. When you go through the pre-collegiate years up through high school, even though, of course, you're being taught how to reason, there's a far greater emphasis on skill development, to be sure that everyone has the baskets of skills that they need to go on. And then when you get to college, very frequently it is described as a change from learning the skills to learning how to think. Well, there's no need for that really to wait if you have a thirsty young mind that is ready to think that way. And so we will draw on a lot of topics from discrete math. I mentioned symbolic logic is one that I like to do. And the younger kids, as long as they don't go too far into, proofs, with the basic truth tables and showing them how to use a truth table to prove something short, they can actually get it. And so I stop when it gets too big. At the very end of the class, I'll show them some really big truth tables, and everyone will go like this. But they're impressed with themselves that they can understand this fancy stuff that they've never seen before. And that's where I like to leave them, is let them be impressed with their own ability, that what they were able to do that day. Too often, I think, we start that too late, and students tend to feel that they get a fear of math, they can't do it, and they don't realize that they really can. So I really try to break down that barrier earlier. Probably every teacher has this experience of looking out and seeing faces light up. You start with a room that is chaos, and I try to get control of the room and get them to pay attention, and the hands start going up, and by the end of the class they're yelling out answers and so forth, and you see you've turned them in the course of that class. That is a wonderful thing. Well, for us, I don't know what we would do without them. I mean, we are based at the University of California, San Diego, in the sense that almost all of our activities take place on the campus. And we do that in large measure because the math department operates with us and helps provide us space. They also help us with some of the teaching. I mentioned before that we are very diversified in how we bring people in, so we don't rely on them for the teaching, which they also appreciate. Everyone is too busy, but they are interested to come in and help them. point is not so much that you take away an achievement for that day that you log and can bank. It's more nebulous than that. You want to expand your mind, you want to expand the way you think, show you things you hadn't seen before, empower you to go home and explore in a way that maybe you wouldn't have before. Because these students that we deal with, they have tremendous curiosities and they're hungry for things to feed it. So if I can feed them directions that they can take their own curiosity, that feeds them better than a particular achievement for the day that can be logged.